I've been wanting to get something off of my chest for a very long time. The only person who knows the whole story is my wife, and she didn't find out until we were already engaged. I didn't have anyone to talk to about this because anyone who knows will think ill of me. It's been 15 years since these events took place, so I finally feel safe enough to talk about them anonymously. I had a really hard time in high school. Traumatic events in my childhood combining with hormonal changes did not make me the most easygoing guy. I'd consider myself handsome now, but at the time I was 5'4", paler than fresh linen and bone-thin. My hobbies were all indoors and solitary in nature, and I found it hard to make friends. I was the lone wolf that everyone warns you about. The only friend I had in the world was my creative writing teacher, Mr. Artis. He was an older guy, but I think he saw some of himself in me. He let me hide out in his office to avoid the jocks who taunted me daily. We would talk about writing and what we were reading, but most of the time we just talked about life. He had talked me down a few times. I was massively depressed, suicidal even. I never went through with my plans because he was always there for me. He talked me through things that I thought no one else would understand. He understood the anger like no one else did. I hated the boys who would bully me. I hated the girls who would giggle at me as I walked by. I hated the teachers who turned a blind eye, or the ones like my gym teacher who almost encouraged it. I think if it weren't for Mr. Artis, I wouldn't be here to tell my story. If I hadn't had him to talk to confide in, the self-loathing and anger and disgust would have bubbled over a lot sooner than it did. I'm thankful for that. My junior year of high school, Mr. Artis got sick. They didn't tell us what he had, but he missed almost a month of classes. Not having anyone to talk to took a toll on me. I wasn't allowed in his office alone, so I lost my hiding place. Being around more often meant that I was an easier target. The assholes who tormented me day in and day out stepped up their game. Almost every day was torment. The bullying escalated from just taunting me to physically hurting me. I was punched square in the nose one day. Another time, they slammed my hands in my locker door and locked it shut. On top of everything going on at school, my mom and dad had been fighting for a while. The week of the event, my mom left. Neither of my parents understood me, but Mom tried. Leaving me alone with my father is something that I still haven't forgiven her for, 15 years later. I know what I did was stupid. I know that it was the most drastic solution to something that would change over time. I didn't see it that way, though. My dad kept a gun in the attached garage. It was loaded and tucked away for emergency situations like going to the shooting range with his buddies. On Monday, I took the gun to my room. Dad didn't notice that it was missing because the drawer where it's kept is mostly empty. I posed with it in the mirror, practicing my icy stare. I knew right away what I wanted to do, although the thought of just using it to blow my own brains out crossed my mind a few times. I didn't want to go out like that, though. I wanted to leave a lasting impression. I counted the bullets in the gun 17 times. There were only 3. I didn't know where to find more ammo, so I knew that I would have to make every shot count. One bullet was for John Carter the asshole, who filled my locker with piss-filled balloons. The second bullet was for Mike Wallace, who catfished me for weeks pretending to be a girl in our class, and then stood me up when I asked her out. The final bullet was for myself. I didn't want to go to jail, and I sure as hell didn't want to keep living. On Friday morning, I tucked the gun into the waistband of my jeans, wearing a big hoodie to cover the bulge. Everything felt different entering the school, like I was dreaming. The school itself almost looked like a set on a TV show, all conversation blurring like background murmurs. I suppose, looking back, that I had detached myself emotionally from the situation. I was calm and collected as I walked the halls, looking for my victims. I was early and classes hadn't started yet, but I figured John Carter would be in the gym shooting hoops. I made my way down the corridor that led to the athletics wing with determination. "Harold!" I heard a familiar voice and stopped. I turned to see Mr. Artis standing at his office door. "Come in, I need to speak with you." "Hey, it's good to see you," I awkwardly smiled back at him. "Listen, I'm kind of busy right now. Can this wait?" I was a man on a mission. I didn't want to lose momentum. "No, it cannot. Come in." His tone was kind, but the sternness was undeniable. He held open the door to his office and entered behind me. I asked him why he had wanted to see me, but he simply stated that he wanted to talk. He asked me how things had been while he was away, but I didn't want to talk. The answers I gave him were short, cold, nothing like my usual self. I could tell that he knew that something was up but didn't want to push me. As I leaned back in the chair, wishing he would just leave me alone, my sweatshirt lifted slightly, the bulge becoming more evident. "Harold," Mr. Artis whispered, "what on earth is that for?" My cheeks turned bright red with embarrassment at being caught, and my heart started to pound in my ears. I knew it was over then. Mr. Artis was cool, but he was still a teacher. I assumed that the police and my parents would be called, that I would be kicked out of school and possibly sent to prison. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. Words got caught in the back of my throat, my eyes welling up with tears, and I just broke. The weight of the world which I had been carrying finally broke my back, and all I could do was sob. Mr. Artis didn't say a word, just waited for me to compose myself. When I finally did, I told him about everything that had been going on. I had never cried in front of him before, and the emotion that flowed out of me was surprisingly relieving. When the tears stopped and I had run out of things to say, Mr. Artis held his hand out for the gun. "Are you going to have me arrested?" I asked. "No. What good would that do?" he asked. I couldn't stop apologizing, but Mr. Artis's eyes were kind as he told me that everything was going to be okay. He told me that he understood what I wanted to do, but that it was the wrong solution. Comforted by his presence and finally being able to get everything off my chest, I almost agreed with him. I gave Mr. Artis the gun, which he said that he would dispose of. I knew my dad would be livid that it went missing, but that was a problem for another day. I thanked Mr. Artis for everything and went to class. I was late to Spanish, but I told the teacher that I was in the nurse's office. Senora Miller didn't question it. My eyes were still red, and my nose was runny. The rest of the class was uneventful, but just as the bell was supposed to ring, the principal came over the speaker with an announcement. "May I please have everyone's attention? Last night at 8:06 p.m., our school lost a beloved member of our faculty. Mr. Gideon Artis found peace last night after a lifetime struggling with a hereditary disorder. There will be a service on Tuesday for anyone who would like to attend, and all counselors will be available all week for any student or faculty member who would like grievance assistance. We will now have 5 minutes of silence for Mr. Artis." There were gasps around the classroom as the announcement played, but Senora Miller quieted us down. We bowed our heads out of respect and sat in silence. I often ponder what happened that day. I wonder if Mr. Artis was a ghost, but seemed so real. My mental state that day was far from sane, and it's possible that I hallucinated the whole thing, my subconscious finding a way to stop me from making a terrible mistake. The biggest mystery of all is that of the gun. I know I took it from my dad's drawer. I remember counting the bullets over and over again. I remember the way it felt, heavy in my waistband, and I know that I handed it over to Mr. Artis. The next weekend, my dad went to the shooting range, and I was ready for hell when he couldn't find it. Except that he did find it. It was right there in the drawer, still loaded with 3 bullets. I can't explain the events that took place, but I guess a part of me wonders if Mr. Artis just wanted to look out for me one more time. I got into urbex at an early age, middle school to be exact. This was long before it became popular on YouTube or TikTok. I was never outgoing, academically advanced, or particularly good at sports. Neither me nor any of my friends had much extra money to throw towards spending afternoons at the mall or arcade. My first experience with urbex started when some friends and I had a sleepover at Caitlin's. Caitlin lived in a trailer in a rural village. A lot of the houses nearby were large and expensive, not quite mansions, but pretty close. We were eating popcorn and watching a movie when Caitlin mentioned an abandoned home behind her house. She explained that the couple who lived there had a nasty divorce and the house was up for sale as a result. Caitlin had never seen the inside of the house, but her mom had mentioned it being really nice. I had an idea to liven up our night. "Why don't we go see it?" I asked. They all looked at me like I was crazy. "We've snuck out before. Why not just go over, take a look, then come right back?" Caitlin shrugged. "I don't see why not," she said. Caitlin distracted the family dog with a treat, while the rest of us crept out the back door. It took less than 5 minutes to reach the house. We tried unsuccessfully to pick the lock, but luckily, Jessie found an unlocked window. The interior of the house was magnificent. The floors were all marble, and there was an extravagant fireplace in the living room. We began to look around. Each room seemed more luxurious than the last. One of the more notable spaces was a hot tub, oddly placed at the landing of the stairs in the front room. After an hour or so of exploring, we headed back to Caitlin's. Luckily, we got back in without waking her parents. Since that night, urbex has been my passion. Caitlin and I explored many abandoned places together. Our selection of locations to explore expanded over the years as our curfew got later and we got our licenses. Although Caitlin was adventurous, there was still one destination she avoided. Oak River School was one of the most insidious yet least known scandals in my hometown. It seemed to be a typical high school. It boasted average academic scores and a great football team. But below the surface, something wasn't right. A record number of graduates from Oak River were diagnosed with cancer, particularly leukemia. Some were diagnosed only a few years after graduation, and others not, until decades later. The school was abruptly closed, and students were sent to temporary sites to continue classes, while a new school was quickly rebuilt several miles away from the old one. Eventually, the truth came out. The soil Oak River High was built on was used as a dumping ground for nuclear waste in the 1940s. The cancer rates weren't a coincidence. The old Oak River was never torn down. My aunt, Cora, was one of the many unfortunate alumni who developed leukemia. She passed away when I was 17. She was the stereotypical cool aunt who let me watch R-rated movies and served me Pepsi in a wine glass whenever I visited. More than that, Cora was the only one in my family I could truly be myself around. From holding me as I cried when I wrecked my bike at 6 years old, to helping me through my first breakup at 15, I could always count on her. Losing Cora was the worst experience of my life. I'd always wanted to explore Oak River, but for some reason, her death made me fixate on it even more. I had to see what it looked like, the radioactive school frozen in time. I felt like if I walked through the same hallways or stepped into the classroom where Cora had been so many years before, she would be there with me. Of course, I was smart enough to realize this was just a morbid fascination from grief, and that nothing would change once I left. But I still couldn't let go of the thought of going to Oak River. "Come on, Jess agreed to go and she's bringing all her photography equipment," Aura begged Caitlin during our phone call. "No," she responded. "You know that's the one place I won't go." I accepted her answer and called Jess to let her know we would be going without Caitlin. We met at the back entrance of Oak River at 8 that night. The school wasn't as hard to break into as I expected, and we quickly found ourselves in the hallway. Some old trophies and medals were still on display behind the dusty glass. Why didn't they take those? I wondered out loud. "They're probably all covered in radioactive dust," Jess laughed. Ron, Jess's boyfriend, met us shortly after we found our way in. He sus into paranormal investigation and wanted to try out some of his equipment as the school was rumored to be haunted. They proceeded to the gym and were messing with the EMF sensor for a while, so I decided to look around on my own. The first few classrooms I looked at weren't as bare as I expected. They still had posters on the wall and other equipment out. I found a globe and spun it, instantly regretting my decision as dust float into the air. Luckily, we had worn masks and gloves to try to limit our exposure as much as possible. I heard a rustling noise. I turned around to see where it was coming from. Next to the boarded-up window, I noticed a mostly wilted potted plant. But the plant wasn't dead. It was moving. Very subtle movements. I had to do a double take to be sure of what I saw. "What the hell?" I whispered. The only way I can describe the movement is almost a sort of twitching. I got out my phone to record and picked up a ruler to poke it. The plant coiled around the ruler tightly, almost yanking out of my hand. I yelled and jumped back. Jess and Ron came running. I tried to explain what happened, but they didn't seem convinced. Ron found a pointer by the chalkboard and poked the plant again. It didn't move. I stammered, trying to explain what happened. Jess and Ron exchanged glances. "Maybe you shouldn't be walking around here alone," suggested Jess. Ron nodded. "Let's all just stay together," he suggested. I reluctantly agreed. We took a look in a few other classrooms. Jess photographed each as we went along. Eventually, we made our way into the cafeteria. We found some old trays, glasses, and even unopened cans of food. As we ventured further into the kitchen, Ron halted, almost causing Jess to run into him. "Why'd you do that?" she snapped. "Shh, listen," whispered Ron. Through the silence, I could hear a faint chewing noise. It continued for a few minutes, then came the clang of a can hitting the ground. A light rustling followed. We stood there, frozen. Ron involuntarily coughed. A figure emerged from the darkness. Jess turned the flashlight to it. It definitely wasn't an animal. But it also couldn't be human. It stood on two legs, was almost 7 feet tall, emaciated, with yellow-tinged skin speckled with red boils that looked like they were about to pop. The figure let out a groan that sounded equal parts terrified and angry. Jess screamed, dropping her flashlight. Ron and Jess took off in one direction while I ran in another. I ducked into a janitor's closet. I tried to quiet my breathing as much as possible, even taking off my mask, trying to catch my breath. I sat against the wall, head in my hands, trying to stave off a panic attack. I looked around the closet a bit, seeing if there was anything I could use for self-defense. All I found was an old broom. I stayed quiet for a while, then hesitantly stepped out of the closet when I was convinced the creature was nowhere close. I began looking for Jess and Ron. I tried calling Jess, but my phone had no service. I heard labored breathing and trudging down the hallway. "Damn it," I thought. I noticed a door on my left. It was glass but was fogged up to the point where I couldn't see through it. The hallway was a dead end, and I could hear the figure getting closer. I opened the glass door and stepped into the room. The air was thick and humid. I struggled to keep from coughing. I put the broom through the door handles to barricade myself in. I hoped the figure would pass me by, but then I heard a pounding at the door. I wasn't sure how much force it would take to break the old glass, and I had no interest in finding out. I panned the room with my flashlight, looking for another way out. My flashlight passed over a dark, reflective abyss. This was the old pool. The walls were covered in a mixture of black and green molds. I remembered Cora had mentioned being on the swim team years before. There was a door on the other side of the room. I began making my way to the other side, but quickly realized my way was blocked by some overturned bleachers. I tried lifting them up, but it was no use. "Harper!" Jessie yelled from the door on the other side of the room. Noticing the predicament I was in, Jessie and Ron attempted to move the bleachers, but weren't able to either. At this point, the glass door was splintering from the humanoid monster pounding on it. "You know how to swim, right?" asked Ron. I nodded. "Are you crazy?" screamed Jessie. "She can't swim through that radioactive bullshit." I'd already accepted my fate of having to wade through this disgusting, abandoned pool and tried to reassure her I'd be fine. I found a piece of wood to set my backpack on, trying to keep it as dry as possible. I stepped into the cold, dark water. The water felt thicker than I expected. It was like moving through jello. The smell was a repulsive combination of decay and metallic. I swam as fast as possible. I'd almost reached the edge when the water began rippling. My right leg stopped moving. It was caught on something. Jesse and Ron noticed my struggle. Ron jumped into the water and tried to pull me forward. He shined a flashlight through the dark waters, revealing a labyrinth of dark green limbs. "What the hell?" Ron whispered. The water began to move rapidly. I felt the slimy substance tighten around my leg and screamed. Ron began thrashing around, cursing and yelling. I frantically grabbed for my backpack, retrieving my pocket knife out of the front pocket. I took a deep breath, went underwater, and hacked at the slimy substance trapping my leg. It began to twitch as the grip loosened, and I got myself free. Jesse was pulling Ron out of the water on the other side, crying frantically. Something most people don't know about Jessie was that she had an extreme fear of water and couldn't swim. A near-drowning experience when she was 4 had left her traumatized. I pulled myself up to the surface, and we all ran out the door. Ron was limping. He had a nasty gash on his left calf. Once we got some distance from the pool, we stopped and Jessie tied her jacket around it to slow the bleeding. Jessie's phone rang, startling us. "Caitlin," she answered, placing it on speaker. A grainy FaceTime call lit up the screen. The background was dark, but looked familiar. Caitlin was in the classroom closest to the entrance. "Caitlin, listen to me. You need to leave. There's some weird shit happening here," Jessie tried to explain. The connection wasn't good. The call cut out every few seconds, making it difficult to understand. Jesse, Ron, and I all tried to explain what was going on, but Caitlin clearly didn't understand. The connection continued to get worse the further into the school Caitlin got. Eventually, the call dropped completely, and none of us were able to dial back out. "Jesse, you and Ron get out and go find some help. I'll find Caitlin and meet you guys on the other side." Ron tried to protest. Luckily, Jesse was able to convince him that the bleeding was too serious to continue. As we parted ways, Jesse and I agreed that if Caitlin and I weren't safely out in 15 minutes, she would call for help. "Caitlin!" I called out as I reached the front of the building. "Help!" I heard her yell frantically. I ran towards the sound and saw her. We sprinted towards each other, but she tripped over something in the process. A figure donning an archaic gas mask emerged behind her, grabbing her ankles and dragging her away. "No!" I yelled. I tried to run towards the assailant, but someone grabbed me from behind. As I tried to fight my way out, I flailed, slamming my head into the wall. I felt dizzy, and everything went dark. I saw a light. I knew what people always said about going into the light. Was this death? "She's awake," I heard. A paramedic was kneeling over me. I jumped. As I regained consciousness, I started stammering. "Wait, what's going on? Where's Caitlin?" The EMT tried to calm me. My mom and Jesse were nearby. My head hurt a lot, and my arms and legs were bruised. I was transported to the hospital. That night, the only answer I could get as far as Caitlin IS whereabouts was that they were looking for her. The next day, I was informed by police that Caitlin's body was found in the school. The stairs had collapsed, crushing her. I tried to tell police about the man in the gas mask, but they clearly didn't believe me. They pretty much nodded, then had a social worker follow up with me with information on trauma counseling. What bothers me the most is I'm not even sure Jess and Ron believe me. Something sinister is still happening in that school. I'm going back. River Oak won't take anyone else from me. I don't have much time, so I'll try to crunch as much info as I can. This lock can only hold this thing back for so long. Icarus is a rather suiting name, knowing what I got myself into. Let's start with where it's at. The school is located in Texas, not saying which town, just please avoid any abandoned schools in Texas. For, I don't know if this thing is for each school. Please understand, I don't want anyone to go out like I am about to. So this all started as a joke at first. An old school my friends wanted to check out and do like a ghost hunting video. We never thought we'd go since most of us were still scared of loud sounds. It wasn't until Tyler, the oldest in the group, said he recently bought a few laptops, a bunch of cameras, and a few spirit boxes. It was just a fancy recorder. Anyhow, he seemed like he wanted to, so we go together as a group. It was Tyler, John, Rick, Lesha, and I. We all sat down and read all the ghost stories online. It only involved being cold or the occasional scratch or two. Plus, Tyler said, "If we get some of these things on camera, we will go viral and be rich in no time." I was the only techie guy there, so I was to handle tech and set up the YouTube channel where we would post all of this content. Tyler was the strongest one, so he carried all the stuff. I just set it up. John, Rick, and Lesha all were to bring food, water, and first aid kits just in case. I know John was in JROTC, so he had legitimate first aid training. Let me describe the layout of the school. It was 3 stories high. Each floor had the same design except the first, since it had a basement and a small boiler room. The other 2 floors above had your usual, about 20 rooms each, and 2 sets of bathrooms on each floor. We had enough cameras to log each hallway and bathroom, but as the rumor has it, the basement and boiler room are where all the action kicks off. One more important note is why the school is haunted. Is because about 40 years back, there was a massive school shooting here. 19 children lost their lives, including the shooter. Now, this was before big media could handle the issue and the local government paid. The family's outrageous sums of money to keep Texas' top school from getting blacklisted. They said it wasn't much longer when kids ended up going missing in the area. Some kids would go to the water fountain and just disappear when no one was looking. This too was covered by the school board as they went missing after school hours. The school board held a vote the next year to close the school down. Maybe they couldn't bear the thought or guilt of more children being lost. Shortly after, the school became a local legend and how the souls of the children are trapped, etc. All local legends get exaggerated where one person trips on a rock and suddenly there's a ghost who pushes people down. However, this one seems legit. It is a hidden gem in the ghost hunting community as it's very secluded and hidden from the public, so really only locals know of it. There are reports of scratching, pushing, possession, and even what most people call hellhound, as it's a large black dog with bright red eyes. We arrived at the school ready to go. We have enough food and water to last us a few days just in case someone wanted food. We also brought all the tech and tripods for the camera. Rick's dad had a generator that was in his shed. It was old and dusty, but ran just fine, which was perfect to keep all of the equipment juiced up. I brought my mobile hotspot so we can go live on YouTube or just post on the account once it's all done. Plus, we have to keep in touch without our parents. We decided to set up a base camp in the first floor's bathroom. It looked still put together beside some broken glass, but that was easy to sweep away. Once we got set up, Tyler, Rick, and I went to each floor to set up the cameras while there was still some light out. We ran the wire and I turned them on record once we got back to the hub. And then we waited, which took a few hours, since we got there at 4 p.m., and sundown wasn't till 6 p.m. Time passed by slowly, with nothing showing up on the cameras yet. So we all started telling ghost stories to pass the time. Most of them were silly and made zero sense. Why would anyone lock themselves in a room they can't get out of? Isn't it ironic? Well, it wasn't until 7:35 p.m. when we had our first sign. Guys, we have movement on the second floor, Lesha said excitingly. We all rushed by the second floor laptop, where we saw just a shadow going in and out of the doors of the bathroom. It was moving fast, as if it was running. I gotta go live on YouTube. We're going to be famous, I said. I quickly tabbed over and refreshed the page. To only get our live access denied. It's okay though, since our channel was new, we can just upload it later, Tyler said, looking back. He was so optimistic all the time. I set all the cameras to record and to signal us any movement detected. As soon as I did, all the cameras dinged at the same time, letting me know something was moving on them all. So we all chose a camera to look at. The second and third floor was firing off with tons of activity. Shadow people, orbs, random debris being tossed, and doors closing and opening. It was very off-putting how it all started popping off. I got an eerie feeling. Like, have you ever had a sense of approaching or overwhelming dread? I started to sweat and panic. Everyone was so happy. "We're going to be famous!" Rick yelled out. Lesha and John were jumping in joy, yelling stuff like, "Fuck yay, make some noise, it's gold!" I looked at Tyler. He was white as a ghost. He must feel it too. I decided to pull him to the side, and he saw my face, and how I was worried. Now, this was out of character for Tyler to be scared. I've known him all my life. He's always been my protector. I was the weak nerd, and he was the big, tough, but lovable jock. Hell, I even came out as bi and was bullied in school. Tyler was a senior and I a junior, and Tyler didn't seem disgusted. He always was by my side. So when I know something is wrong with him, I know. Tyler, yo big guy snaps out of it. We need to talk. I shook him, and doing so he looked down, blinked a few times, and with a straight face, he said, "We need to leave. Now." He rushed to the laptops and grabbed them, and the other part of the group was shocked. "Hey, what the fuck, man? We're going to be famous," said John. Tyler stared them down with anger. "You fucking idiots, I'm trying to save us. We need to leave now. Fuck the cameras, we can come back later in the daytime?" Everyone gulped and saw he was serious. Tyler and I started jogging out. I had one laptop, and he had the other. We were about to make it when we heard Lesha scream. I opened my backpack and threw my laptop in it and ran back in there without a second thought. I can hear Tyler yelling at me, "Stop, they are already dead, you idiot!" I don't know what got over me, but it felt as if my body was moving on its own, as if my will to save my friends outweighed my fear of death. I got to the bathroom. In front was John. At least it was just his face. It was peeled off like orange and tossed aside. I can taste the blood in the air, and I can hear Rick crying in the bathroom. No, please, we're sorry. Please, I don't want to die." I can hear in the background the sound of Lesha gurgling. I don't know why I didn't just run. I had to see for myself. It felt like a dream. No, it was a nightmare. I slowly and as quietly as I can go into the bathroom and saw John. His body was flayed like a fish. Guts were missing and his chest cavity was empty. I pissed my pants and almost vomited at the sight of it. I can feel my vision blacking out. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, and before I can scream, Tyler covered my mouth. We used sign language to communicate what was going on. Never knew just learning this on a whim would ever come in handy. We need to get out and grab Rick while the thing is busy with Lesha. Tyler signed to me. I know, but how will we do it? In the background, we heard a loud crunch, and Rick can be heard vomiting. It sounded like a watermelon popping. It bit her head off. I can hear the squelching of blood coming out of her neck. Icarus. We need to stay focused. I can distract the thing. It's not very fast as I saw it running on the first floor cams. I shook my head. What did it look like? I asked. It doesn't matter now, but it's not a wolf. Go hide in the girls' bathroom. I will lure it out, and I'll meet you outside. I shook my head. Be safe, bro. I signed back. We got into position. We can hear the thing still gorging on Lesha's body. I see Tyler as he gave me a thumbs up and a smile. This was the fakest smile I had seen him do. He then waved me to hide. Hey, you ugly bitch. I know your punk ass is in there. Why don't you come for me? The sounds of crunching bone and tearing flesh stopped. Ha 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 ha. It started laughing. You sound delicious, ha ha ha. The sound shook me to my core. I can hear it walking out of the bathroom. It must have stepped on John's body as popping and cracking can be heard, followed by plopping of its feet. You better start running, boy. It yelled. Catch me if you can lose her. Tyler starts booking it as fast as he could. I only caught a small glimpse of it, but it was a pale man. He was naked, but with no real body features. He had very long arms that scraped the floor and were covered in a red hue despite being nearly white. I could smell him as he ran by. His flesh was rancid and the smell lingered in the air. As he chased my friend, I can hear him laughing. Ha ha ha, this is fun, run rabbit running. Once I couldn't hear him anymore, I ran to the other bathroom and saw Rick crying in a stall. I grabbed his hands, but he was covered in blood. I said, "Rick, are you okay? We're going to get out of here, buddy. It'll be okay." Rick said, "Icarus." He removed his hands from his fast and his eyes and nose were gone, ripped out. Icarus. I've seen the face of God. He came here to punish us for looking into the veil. I'm doomed. You must leave. I snapped out of my trance and grabbed him by his arm and quietly said, "No, we are leaving, not just me. I will not lose another friend." I hoisted Rick up, and we slowly started to walk to the exit. "Where were you going, little rabbits?" I slowly turned to see. This thing caught up to Tyler. He was dragging him by his hands. He looked cut up, but not eaten. However, he was unresponsive. I don't know what came over me, but I yelled at the beast, "Fuck you! Haven't you taken enough? Those kids 40 years back? All of those kids after who went missing? Is it not enough?" Rick pulled away and fell into the fetal position. "No, it's never enough. I will always be hungry. Always." Ha 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 ha. This thing let out a bellow of laughter. It looked straight at me and looked at Rick. You brought me a snack. I love when they are afraid. It makes them much more satisfying." It was when he let go of Tyler and reached toward Rick that I saw Tyler launch up and drive a large metal pipe into its neck. Tyler grabbed my hand and we ran into the basement. I can hear the thing crying in the background. "You son of a bitch!" We got into the basement and locked the door. Tyler was losing a ton of blood. He's been eviscerated. I can see him carefully holding his stomach together. I started to cry and yelled, "Tyler, no, 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 this can't be happening." He looked at me and with his other hand. He placed it on my shoulder. He then coughs and says weakly, "Issy, listen carefully. There's nowhere to go. I want to say this." He starts to pass out. I shook him carefully. "What did you want?" I said. He just looks me in the eye and says, "Ixie, you are my best friend. I never told you, but I love you. I do. I'm madly in love with you." I couldn't help but cry as I grabbed his face with one hand, and he smiled. I'm in love with you too." We shared a smile. I leaned in and I had my first kiss. It was shortly after he passed away in my arms. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck in this fucking basement with this laptop and my Wi-Fi pod. I hope this gets through. I'm happy I got to tell Tyler my final feelings. I can hear this thing breaking into the door. It won't hold any longer, and I have no chance. Tyler, I hope we meet somewhere in the ether. Whoever gets this, please stay out of any old schools. I love you, Tyler. See you soon.